Every tragedy has 6 parts: plot, character, diction, thought, spectacle, and song. Of these elements, plot is the most important. For tragedy is an imitation, not of men, but of an action and of life. And life consists in action, and its end is a mode of action, not a quality. 7 years ago, when I was still trying to become a novelist, I took a masterclass by Aaron Sorkin on writing. Before taking the class, I self-published a collection of essays, many of which ended up becoming my initial YouTube videos, as well as a short novel, but everything I had ever written was very small in scale. One day, however, I had an idea for what I thought might be a grander, more compelling story. But I didn't want the idea to go to waste. I didn't want to write myself into a corner as I had done so many times in the past. Hence the masterclass. And one of the things that Aaron Sorkin stresses in this class is the importance of reading this, Aristotle's Poetics. I had never read this book as I majored in Japanese at university and I wasn't a drama kid in high school. Not a good excuse, I know. So I added this to my to-read list and kept going through the class, jotting down notes and ideas for my story along the way. But then life happened. My wife got pregnant. Now this is when I was still working at APU, making about $2,000 a month doing student recruitment, but also around the time that my YouTube channel, which I had recently started as both a creative outlet and also a potential source of future income, finally started to pick up some traction as someone had shared one of my videos on the Learn Japanese Reddit. And it was there that several people encouraged me to create a Patreon, which I did. I put my writing aspirations to the side and I created a series on Japanese pitch accents, something I actually did study at university. I was feeling a lot of pressure to provide, of course, because my wife was pregnant, but on top of that, the hotel that she had been working at for the previous 3 years, a hotel in the next town over, had just been destroyed in this cataclysmic earthquake. And the next month brought even more changes. I got my first check from Patreon, that was awesome, but then I also learned that my wife was pregnant with not 1, but 2 kids, twin daughters. I knew that my APU salary would never pay the bills for a 4-person family, but also started to see the potential of YouTube and Patreon, both platforms where I was becoming proud of what I was creating. So I put this and my storytelling aspirations to the side and leaned into the so-called YouTube grind. And it paid off. By the time that my kids were born, several months later, my combined YouTube and Patreon income was larger than my APU salary, giving us just a little bit of savings and hope for the future. So I quit APU and leaned into YouTube and fatherhood. I scripted and shot my YouTube videos for multiple years in between diaper changes while my kids were taking a nap or watching the occasional movie. And it was hard, but it was also very rewarding. I felt like I was being a pretty good dad, and though I wasn't making my creative writing telling novels and I still hadn't read this, I was making my living through a different form of creative writing, telling jokes about life in Japan and learning the Japanese language. And this is the groove that I settled into. My YouTube sub count continued to grow, but my storytelling aspirations slowly faded away. But one day, all of that changed. Edge runners hit me like a ton of bricks. It was the wake-up call I needed. It reminded me of how powerful, how transcendent good storytelling can be. I still cannot get through the "I really want to stay at your house" music video without crying. I completely reassessed my life. I thought, what are my goals and what do I need to do in order to achieve them? I love making videos about life in Japan and the Japanese language, and it's something I'm going to continue to do indefinitely. But watching edge runners made it impossible for me to not at least try to also engage in creative writing, in storytelling. So I picked up where I left off. I started waking up early each morning to do things related specifically to storytelling and that form of creative writing. And the first thing that I did was I went through Aaron Sorkin's class one more time. From there I did James Cameron's and David Mamet's and the Duffer Brothers. I finally got around to reading this as well as a few other books, but more importantly, after more than half a decade, I was finally writing again. And in the midst of all of this, after a series of unbelievable coincidences, I actually met the creator of Edge Runners, Rafal Jaki, and ended up spending a day with him and interviewing him here on this channel. All of this leads me to No Name. I'm still a ways out from being able to talk about either of the 2 original stories that I'm trying to create, but Recently, I had the honor of being able to work on a different writing project, and that's No Name, Rafal's new original IP. It's written by him and illustrated by the brilliant machine Gamu. So I served as one of several editors on No Name, and now that it's out, I wanted to first encourage people to go check it out, to go read it, but also take this opportunity to talk about what it was like to work behind the scenes on an original manga. How is a manga made? Where do you even start? Well, Rafal, like most, started with the premise, a single sentence that describes the idea. What if people had powers based on the meaning of their name? And from there, he went into a little bit more detail about the world. No Name is a dark action mystery set in Northern Europe, where supernatural powers are attributed through a person's name, given to everyone by the government. A man fighting with wolf companions and a werebear girl investigate a missing child case for the government-run naming agency. Next was the outline, a 9-page Google Doc which very concisely described the setting and its rules, 1 page, the story, another page, and the main characters accompanied by concept art. About half a page for the written descriptions with multiple pages of concept art by Gamu. Now, I asked a ton of questions as this was an opportunity for me to try and test some of the knowledge I had acquired through my research. For example, Rafal, this is your first original IP. Which of the 4 quadrants do you plan on marketing this to the most? I can clearly see the protagonists' want in this outline, but can you tell me a little bit more about their need? After Rafal answered my questions, he then asked me, as well as several of his much more qualified friends, for feedback. He said, what do you think of the setting, the story, the characters? Try and be specific. I didn't know if I could give informed feedback, but Rafal seemed to think that I could. Maybe it was the Japanese banks video.
先ほど ATM でやろうとしたんですけど、メニューが多すぎてちょっと850円ですか?
Joking aside, I can understand why he asked based on his previous work in writers' rooms. It's very difficult to understand and wrap your head around the things that you might be overlooking in your own work, and bringing in a set of external eyes, even amateur eyes, can help you to immediately pinpoint these kind of mistakes, the things that would have taken you weeks, if not months, to notice by yourself. And this is true for many fields. You don't need to be a great cook in order to appreciate great food, and you don't need to be able to dunk in order to tell which of 2 basketball players is better at dribbling. That said, I didn't really give too much feedback on the outline, and my immediate first impression was, "Sasuga desu." Oh yeah, this is the person that made Edge Runners. I did find it very reassuring, however, that Rafal had done exactly what all these books were recommending, which is to finish the story at multiple resolutions before you write a single line of dialogue. What I mean by this is that he had the log line, so the single sentence that hooks readers in, and then he had a single paragraph that describes the setting. And then on top of this, he had the actual story synopsis. Again, the story has been finished at multiple levels: the sentence level, the paragraph level, and then the single page level. You want to do this, you want to avoid writing any dialogue before you know exactly where the story is going, because of course, if you don't, you'll end up writing a bunch of great dialogue and cool scenes that actually aren't necessary to the story. And then you'll be a little bit too proud to throw them away, as I've done multiple times in the past. From there, Rafal sent over the first script, a different 36-page Google Doc that fleshed out the story with specific locations, actions, and dialogue, much like a movie screenplay, though it also had some additional concept art from Gamu mixed in. Once again, Rafal asked me for feedback, and I gave it a read, and this time I actually thought that there were a few things I might be able to comment on, namely the dialogue. Now, I'm not great at dialogue by any means, but I've been trying to do it on YouTube for long enough to have developed at least a specific style.
おばあさん、スルメを1個もらってもいいですか? 2本持っていきなさい。
And in that sense, I was able to at least leverage something during this part of the editing process. I would go through the lines that Rafal had written and say, you know, this is great. I might have written it this way. What do you think? In one of the first drafts, for example, I noticed that name powers and name power abusers were being referred to as just that within the dialogue itself. And I thought that there might be an opportunity there to introduce universe-specific slang for each one. A bit like, you know, the terms Chrome and Cyber Psycho from Edge Runners. I thought that expanding the universe's lexicon, so to speak, would cut down on redundancy, but also flesh out things a little bit. Rafal thought it was a good suggestion and subsequently altered a few lines in the script. There were a few other bits like this, such as, you know, this line is great, but it might be even more powerful if you pushed it back a little bit. In this line, this character talks about their wife and son in that order, but then later on, they flip it. Is this intentional? I think I personally had the most fun at this particular stage in the project. I mean, talking about word order and word choice. I never really talk about it publicly publicly, but I love this stuff. Every tweet I've ever written, I edited and I revised for 3 or 4 hours beforehand, even if it's one sentence long. And at the same time that I and the other editors were talking to Rafal, Gamu was using the script to create the layouts. The purpose of the layout is to get a sense of how the visual story flows. How many panels are there going to be? Generally speaking, what are we going to see? From that point, a few iterations are made and the sketches are drawn. These come together a bit like a storyboard, showing the actual poses and panels, facial expressions, etc. After that comes the line art, so the nearly finished characters and backgrounds. The last step is to add the final dialogue, which Rafal had been revising this whole time, as well as the VFX. And just like that, a new story is born. It was incredibly fun for me to work on No Name. Of course, it was amazing to actually do some work with Rafal, but I learned so many things along the way. Each editor picked up on completely different things, and then to watch Gamu-san take this giant block of text and turn it into this striking visual story, that was also incredible. And on top of the creative process, Rafal also shared the business side of things, so the costs, the contracts, the marketing strategies, etc. This was super valuable to me because I have no business acumen, but it also reinforced something that I've heard all of my favorite creators, including Rafal, say in the past. And this was, you can have the coolest idea, the slickest characters and the wittiest dialogue, but nobody will ever know unless you're actually able to bring it to market. You gotta put in the time and effort, you gotta wake up early, and you gotta write. All right guys, that's it. Go check out No Name. I think what Rafal and Gamu-san have created together is nothing short of spectacular, and I'm truly honored to have had even a small role on the project. You can read it for free on the Shueisha Manga Plus platform linked below, where it's just past 1 million views. Okay, new comedic video coming soon. Sayonara.